I'm Mike Bradner, and this is Capitol Views, and we're with Larry Hartig, the Commissioner of the Department of Environmental Conservation, and we're going to talk about debris. So, Larry, what kind of debris?
I think we're talking about marine debris here, Mike, and particularly related to the March 11, 2011 earthquake in Japan and what the consequences have been to Alaska.
Now, this debris is of all kinds. Some of it will sink to the bottom, some of it floats.
Right. What happened is after the earthquake, there was a series of tsunamis that then hit Japan and went up on shore, and some were 30 feet high or so, and caused damage. And then when they came back out, they brought that debris with them. It could be all, like you say, all sorts of things. And as you correctly said, most of it just sank closely offshore of Japan. But some of it did get offshore into the Pacific and was carried by currents and wind towards North America.
Well, do we have a regular wash of debris that comes out of that part of the world? I mean, that we get from, what, fishing? And
that's true. Marine debris has been around for decades as an issue in Alaska. We've all seen it on Alaska beaches. NOAA, the National Ocean Atmospheric Administration, federal agency, they have a small marine debris program just to address this kind of issue around the United States. The state hasn't had a program, but with the Japanese tsunami, it took it up to another level. We're seeing a lot more debris in Alaska.
Well, we're on the North Circle route for shipping, you know, from what, the United States and Japan, which is hard for some people to think about it, that makes it shorter, just like the North Sea route. So we get a lot of shipping, and we get occasionally ships on the beach or ships in the water, and that's always a threat.
Right, we see container ships that lose a container, and that's been a source of scientific research. When they lose one of these containers and dump their cargo, and there's a record of that, scientists track those rubber duckies or whatever around the world and figure out these currents and where they go.
And sometimes the containers float, sometimes they go down away and are there and show up a lot later. I mean, do we really get those on our beaches occasionally?
Yeah, we've seen evidence of containers, whole containers. I could show you slides of those. When we got into the tsunami marine debris situation a year ago, last fall, DEC contracted to do a aerial survey with high-resolution aerial photography, and so we got a good look all the way from the Alaska Peninsula around the southeast of what is on Alaska beaches at that point in time. And I remember some pictures. I think in the Cordova area, there's a whole container there. I think the cargo's all out of it at this point, but it does show we get those. But you saw a whole variety of things, including things that we at the time identified as Japanese marine debris.
Now, can satellites sense, debris that maybe came a long time ago and you can't really identify it on the beach, but satellite sensing can show you where there's areas of?
The experience, at least with the Japanese tsunami debris, is that after it got away from Japan, it really got dispersed, and it was very hard to see even from aircraft. I mean, there were efforts to go out and try to spot it, either because they're looking for navigation hazards or they're trying to track it, but it was just hard to spot out in the whole Pacific Ocean, which made it difficult to validate the models as to the location and the timing of how it would arrive on shore. But early on, it was recognized that given the currents and the wind patterns, that it was likely to be heading towards North America, and a good share of what went to North America would come to Alaska, and that's been our experience.
Now, even if there hadn't been nuclear plants, the nature of a sea wave like that, it goes ashore and then it rakes everything back out.
Yeah.
I mean, it just breaks it to pieces.
Yeah, and those are two separate issues, and I want to make that clear, is that when there was the earthquake and then the tsunami generated, from this landslide offshore, that's where the earthquake was, offshore east of Japan. And then the tsunamis roll in, they cause the physical damage and the loss of life and the big tragedies in Japan. And it wasn't until after those waters receded and taken what became the marine debris offshore that you started having the leakage from the Fukushima nuclear power plant. And so the marine debris itself, we wouldn't expect that that would show any signs of radiation, and the testing of the marine debris in North America by all the different groups that have looked at it has confirmed that. So it was like the leakage in Japan for the plant occurred after the marine debris had left.
What you're saying is the worst case would have been if an earthquake had fractured the nuclear plant and then the sea wave
got
came
washed
in.
out, but that didn't happen.
Then that would be a different thing. And so we're going to maintain vigilance.
Yeah, we're working with NOAA through their marine debris program. Alaska for years has had nonprofit groups that have been out collecting marine debris on beaches, including here in Southeast Alaska. And so the state has been working closely with all the different entities that have been involved and just ramping up. And then finding funding. Funding is coming from NOAA. The government of Japan made a $5 million gift to North America. That went through NOAA, and Alaska's gotten $1 million out of that gift so far for marine debris removal. The legislature made an appropriation last session, and then the Exxon Valdez Oil Spill Trustee Council has put in about $1.2 million money from the Exxon Valdez Oil Spill Trust. And so all these different monies have been organized and to address continuing operations with mainly these nonprofits doing most of the cleanup work.
Are we being watchful of traffic through the Bering Straits that might produce, or considering, what might happen if there was some sort of an accident in that area?
The patterns, again, of the marine debris from Japan have been more towards, initially, well, they've all been going towards North America, and then the higher, what they call higher windage items that float higher, like styrofoam, marine, like mariculture floats, that sort of thing, those got higher in the water, they got pushed more by the wind, so they tended to go up towards Alaska quicker than the heavier material. And so we're seeing that coming now too, but we haven't seen much evidence out towards the Alaska Peninsula, according to that aerial survey that I mentioned, and not around that I'm aware of through the Unimak Pass or through the islands up to
Larry,
Bering.
we're out of time, and I'm Mike Bradner, and this is Capital Views. We've been talking to Larry Hartig, who's the Commissioner of Environmental Conservation. Thank you, Larry.
Thanks, Mike.